Hi, I'm Matthias, and this is a Remington Model 10 riot gun with bayonet.
And I'm May, and this is the Winchester 97 riot gun with bayonet.
Yep. Now, both of these guns were put together for World War I, although only that one really saw combat.
This is true.
And while we've been dealing with them and their history, and there are episodes available to tell you everything about these two guns,
So go watch them.
we came across a myth that has been very prevalent for a long time.
Yes.
And that myth is that you can shoot back an enemy grenade when it is thrown at you and you have one of these shotguns.
Gasp.
Now, there's a couple problems with that theory, but let's lay down some ground rules. So number one, on the front line, you would have 9-pellet double-aught buckshot.
Pretty good stopping power right there.
Yes, and in training, also available in France, I have found out, they had number 7 birdshot.
Oh, okay.
So theoretically, you could get some birdshot to the front line, but we're going to see why that's not such a big deal to even talk about.
Fair.
Okay, and then the idea here is that, as the myth goes, is that you would have these excellent trap shooters. All the shotguns were issued to the best trap shooters.
Makes sense. You want the guys who have the experience to have them.
And the shotguns were put all the way to the front line, and
Makes
there were
sense.
thousands of them everywhere. And then when the Germans threw their grenades, 2 or 3 shotgun guys would shoot at the grenade and return it to the Germans.
That does sound kind of cool.
Right. So we tested this theory actually quite a while ago.
Yeah, we did manage to get a hand of a few grenades, and we filled them instead of with actual live charge, we managed to fill them with baby powder.
Yep,
just to
that
kind of
sounds
show the
like
little
amazing.
poof.
And we had someone hide behind the berm and throw them up into the air, and you were shooting into the air so everybody's safe.
Thank you again, Jay.
And we hit a few, so let's go
Yeah.
ahead and check out that footage. Let's see how it went when we tried to do this little experiment.
They will soon know all about it. Get together now. Bing, bang, bing, bang. Hit 'em on the right. They sang to make the Kaiser whistle, Yankee Doodle Doo. We found the crown prince too, and we have found a few. We'll make the world pay for democracy, you bet we will. But it won't be paid for private.
So, from what I can tell, not a single one of those made it back to Jay, unfortunately.
Yes, so no grenades were returned. That's
No.
number one.
They did stop, though.
Yes, they were halted in their flight, but here's where we start to run into some problems. Number one, double-aught buck just goes right through the damn things.
Yes, it just tears a hole right straight through them.
Right, and even when it doesn't, when it hits the wood handles and stuff like that, it's only enough mass to halt them. Buck
Yeah.
isn't a miracle thing that bounces off. It embeds.
And the few times I managed to actually hit not just the wood but the metal, that's all it did was embed itself into the head of the grenade.
Now, we could do it with bird, but they're not going to bounce back any further. There's not enough mass there. They're going to halt at best. And they're halting, the only time it was a reliable hit for you, they're halting so close, you're still in trouble.
Yeah, there is actually a possibility of me getting hit by the shrapnel.
Now, mechanically, that answers the question of, can you really do this? The answer is sort of, but not really, and it'd be better just to duck.
And the timing on that alone, it's so quick that it happens that can any of them really have had the time to take care of that?
It is an unreliable method. You'd have to be very fast. You'd have to be accurate to a degree that by the time you're out to 25 yards, you're getting enough spread that it's, even if you were dead on at 25 yards, the buck spread is just enough that grenades can fit into the gaps. And so you're not guaranteed to hit then. And this is where people will then tell me, but then they'd have multiple shooters and they'd have blah, blah, blah. And this whole list starts coming out. And the problem is when we went into the historical record, the way that this gun was never issued to the front, that gun was. And the way that gun was issued to the front is that they sent 50 of them per division to like 5 divisions. And then one division got 150 of them and they were told, experiment with them and take them out for night patrols and try to use them on the defensive and the offensive and see what you get. And so there is some possible maybe situation in which one of these divisions put their weapons into one space and used them in this testing way. I doubt it went well, but there's the possibility that this happened. But
It's
realistically,
possible.
the number of those guns that was on the front line for the entire duration of the war is in the hundreds. And, a couple thousand got shipped to the theater, but then armistice came through.
Right,
So,
true.
unfortunately, very limited use gun, and it was only ever popular as a night patrol weapon, and it had major problems, final point, with magazine swelling. So if it had been wet out,
Yes, any sort of moisture, unfortunately, was very damaging for the cartridges because back then, just paper cartridges, that's what they had.
Not
That's
even
what they
wax.
used. No. And unfortunately, not only that, regardless of the wet conditions, you had your paper cartridges, which were frail enough on their own, and the men were not equipped with proper ways to actually hold the cartridges.
so you would get your one shot at the grenade, and that's often all you got, because usually, and by lots of memos that we've read, these things jammed up all the time due to wet conditions, which, where do you find wet conditions but in the trench right at the front?
Right, and then unfortunately at that point, in order to get her cleaned out, you've pretty much got to disassemble this whole front part, taking off the bayonet lug and all, in order to access the action to clean her out with a shotgun brush.
So where does this myth come from? Well, I actually tracked it back, and I was surprised to find that it was being claimed all the way back in the news media during the war itself. And when I kept walking back and poking around, I managed to find this particular article from DuPont. And it's not even an article, it's an advertisement.
So they were already fluffing it a little bit.
It's trying to promote trap shooting. And it basically goes on this whole, it's hyperbole. Like, it really is just a, look at our boys at the front. They're skilled trap shooters, and therefore they can just huck a German grenade right back at the enemy with their amazing trap shooting superpower. And it's just fluff.
Yeah.
Like, none of this says that this actually happened. It's speculative fluff in order to say, oh boy, trap shooters are the best possible soldiers.
Now for the shooter, that sounds exciting as heck, and for the one that's on the receiving side of it, that sounds terrifying. So I can understand why they would try to fluff it.
Yeah, there's also it gets into that sort of the element of everybody wants to be the one to hit on that one weird trick that makes everything easy. Like, it's
It'd
always
be
just
kind of
like,
cool.
it's like this one weird trick and you win the game, or this one weird trick and you're a millionaire. And it's like, there's this element in the news of the U.S. has come to war, and we found this one weird trick just using shotguns, and that's gonna beat them.
It's gonna get the
Just
Germans.
those secret shotguns that nobody thought of because they're so silly Europeans, and it's just like, no, it's a very limited use weapon. And this whole story of the grenade shooting seems to have come from an advertisement, which is how it usually goes.
Yeah, one little story gets built up over time, and that's how it kind of boils down.
Now, did somebody somewhere try it and maybe get away with it? Possibly.
It's possible 10 shotguns at once hit a single grenade and sent it flying slightly back.
Yeah, I mean, there's always room. Every expert knows not to say absolutely 100% this did not happen. However, by the simplest measure of what we can record, it looks like this is a story that just ran amok.
Yeah, it truly does.
I'm sorry to disappoint everybody, but it is a cool story, so you have a good one.
Bye.